Welcome to episode 245 of the 6G podcast. It's the latest inside scoop on everything 6G. We cover six topics in about 30 minutes, and it's brought to you by Morris Size Strategy. I'm Anshel Saad, and joining me again this week is fellow analyst Mike Dano from Ookla. And once again, we've had a busy week, lots going on. And I guess I'll kick off with my first topic because I was on the road with HP. They had their Imagine 2026 conference, which was pretty focused around their AI product that's going to live across most of its commercial PCs. But the important part was actually that they had a pretty big update to their HP Go service and also broadened the number of devices that support it. So last year they launched HP Go, which is their own cellular service that combines T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T. You basically just get the best service that's available to you in the area. You can also, at a certain tier, roam globally, so you don't even have to worry about it when you leave the country. And it was only available on one device, which was like the HP EliteBook 8 G1Q, which was a Qualcomm-based device. Might even be an EliteBook 6, but it wasn't really a very high-end notebook, but it wasn't really a very low-end notebook, and it was one notebook. So applicability was not great. Now it's actually going to span the entire spectrum of HP's lineup from 2, 4, 6, 8, and up. There will be SKUs across all those different tiers of HP notebooks that will offer HP Go. And in addition to that, HP Go will now be available within the European Union for HP customers to activate as a service. So while it worked in the European Union, it didn't work for European customers. So now 23 countries in Europe will be able to sign up for it, in addition to the US, which will significantly broaden their potential customer base, especially when you consider the fact that Europeans actually use mobile broadband more than Americans do on their PCs. And a big reason for that is because a lot of Europeans use trains to commute to work and other public transit, so they can actually, be mobile and productive while they're getting to work and such and so forth. So, I think this is a great move for them. In addition to that, they also updated their Wolf Connect with a new modem. This is a manageability layer. It's specifically for protecting and tracing your system, so you can remote wipe it without needing to actually pay for an actual cellular connection. This is like a narrowband kind of connection that operates in the background, below the OS layer. It also does piggyback on 5G if you do have that. But they updated it so it's a more efficient modem, so it uses less power and it's even less of a challenge for the IT department to deploy. It's really interesting to see them. I think they're the leader in terms of deploying cellular on PCs right now amongst the big PC OEMs. And I think that in my research, I found that the number one thing that people who deploy 5G PCs experience is bad coverage. It's actually the number one pain point that they have is bad coverage. So if you can, squash that with all three carriers, I think it's a big deal. And we'll see, I think this will be the year when we actually get an idea of what this service can do, because it's not just on a trial on a single device in one country. And of course, they're going to have to sell it too. That was kind of my thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think about it.
I'm actually very surprised to hear that. This is the first time I've ever hearing about HP Go. I didn't even know that was a program. And I know for a long time we've been talking about cellular enabled laptops and when that market is going to start developing. And I think there was in the early or in the 4G era, there was sort of a push to get 4G embedded into laptops. And, there was some 4G capable laptops out there. It didn't really take off. The extra cost is obviously a challenge. And I think the same thing in 5G. I know that there's more laptops out there that do have built-in 5G. than in the 4G era, but certainly, it hasn't really caught on to any great degree. And obviously the cost there too is still an issue. It's like $100 more, same in for tablets. So I'm actually interested to hear that HP is really working to address this issue. I think from my standpoint, I'm definitely watching Apple, to see when we'll get a MacBook or something that has built-in 5G. And now that, Apple is investing so heavily into the silicon, presumably that would put them in a position to put 5G directly into the MacBooks. But I do still wonder about, is that a good idea? Because I still tether. Every time I go out, tether my laptop to my phone. Works great. And so even now, I've had people explain to me the reasons behind having a 5G capable laptop. I get it, but man, it's still pretty easy to set up that tether and then keep your laptop a little cheaper. So I'm interested to hear that HP is moving along that path. I'm curious to see how that works out, and then if it spreads to other major laptop manufacturers.
I would agree. I have resorted to tethering when I don't have a 5G connection, but I will tell you, the current class of 5G PCs are faster than tethering, especially when you consider the latency and power consumption that you have to deal with on your phone. The antennas on those PCs are much nicer than they are on your phone, especially once we get better modems. And I think, to your point, Apple could probably ship a 5G PC today if they wanted to. They have the pieces, they have the modems, they have everything in place. I think it's just really a question of when and why. And the new Mac Neo could be how they do it, right? Really low cost device, find a really low cost modem, and use the carriers to help subsidize it. And then it's like, okay, now you have a PC as a service, and it's basically free as long as you pay for the connection. So there's a lot of interesting things I think we can do with that. But I think HP is definitely at the forefront here. And speaking of connections,
yes,
you've got your first topic.
I do. And actually, here was my my pivot to that, was that I was going to say, speaking of hotspots, that is how I how I stayed connected during the Cable Next Gen event. I used my phone as my hotspot during this event because the hotel Wi-Fi was quite slow, and I was really glad that my cellular connection was so strong inside of the building. This week I spent a day at the Cable Next Gen event. It was here in Denver. I've been to it several times over the past couple of years. It's actually a really good event for the cable industry. It's not huge, a couple hundred people. This year it was noticeably smaller than past years. And it's all about basically cable networking technology, a lot about DOCSIS, DAA nodes, all that kind of stuff. You really get down into the details of the networking technology real quick. I thought one interesting takeaway from the show was they had two executives from Comcast speak, and they both were very interesting. And the second speaker really went into actually what you talked about last week, which was the NVIDIA announcement that Comcast had, mainly about essentially edge computing. And so they kind of talked about that. And what I thought was really interesting was that they talked about some of the demos that they have been running using that edge computing technology. One was like, it was basically like a real-time video call, and you could use this edge computing technology to put different clothes onto your body. And so as you're speaking and moving, the clothes would move around in real time, and it would look like you have on a hockey jersey, for example. Another one of their, I thought, interesting demos was that they were showing off real-time translation services. And so as you're speaking, you could have that video in real time translated into another language, but also the video itself would be changed so that your lips would be making the movements of speaking in a different language. So it wouldn't look like it was dubbed and your lips were making other, movements. It was that your lips actually looked like you were saying the words in another language. And that was all done through the edge computing technology that Comcast has been talking about with NVIDIA. So that was kind of interesting. But I think, broadly, my takeaway from that show was that there are a lot of threats that the cable companies specifically are facing. Obviously, fixed wireless is a real big one that I think is well known, that it is really digging into the cable industry's core broadband business. And there was a speaker from IQ Fiber who talked about the expansion that IQ Fiber is doing. So they're sort of a middle market player. They're active in a couple states, about 100,000 homes in their footprint, and they're really challenging the cable companies that are in their footprint. They sell, so they're a fiber operator, and they sell symmetrical service plans up to 5 gigabytes, 5 gigabytes up and down. And they say 10% of their customers are choosing those kinds of plans. And so, between the threat from fiber companies like that, fixed wireless companies, and they also talked about satellite companies like Starlink, all these different kinds of providers are really starting to squeeze into cable companies. And I think the attendance at that show sort of reflects the challenges that cable operators face. It's really a show that is it's not expanding. It does seem to be shrinking, but interesting show. Like a lot of interesting stuff coming out of there. And the edge computing thing, it does tie into what a lot of companies are talking about now, particularly with NVIDIA GPUs. But I think, yeah.
I was just going to add that I'm not surprised that it's dwindling. I do think the cable operators did have an opportunity to modernize their infrastructure. Some of them did to fiber. I think the future has always been fiber. Obviously, there's plenty of opportunities where FWA makes more sense. But, I think the way I look at it is copper is the legacy technology, and all the others are its replacement in different scenarios, which is why I was hoping that BEAD and all these other services that we were trying to roll out with government funding were going to take advantage of all opportunities and not just try to focus on one. Because I think it was a little bit misguided trying to put fiber everywhere. Kind of like millimeter wave doesn't fit everywhere. And I think satellite does have a lot of great ways to fill gaps, but it's not really a capacity technology. So I'm hoping to see more mixtures of these things, and maybe more cable operators investing in upgrades, because the truth is, I've had symmetrical fiber for a very long time, and you will have to pry it from my hands, my cold dead hands. I have a 5 gig symmetrical connection option, but I only use 1 gig because the price is a little bit absurd. It's $250 a month for 5 gig, and I don't really need that, but I'm going to try it out just to see what it's like. But it's just it shouldn't be that expensive. I assume the operator you're talking about does not charge $250. I think otherwise.
No, it's like 130 is what he said.
Half, right? So that makes more sense.
Right, and that feels sort of reasonable, I think. Yeah.
Agreed. So I do think that we're in a place where, cable continues to struggle, and to your point, some of them have also moved towards offering cellular services and repackaging those and bundling. But yeah, one of the problem I think is the monopolies.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that came out of last week too was an analyst note from the financial analysts at TD Cowen, who had a fiber event this past week also. And in their report from that event, they said that Shentel, which is one of the regional cable fiber providers, Shentel is experimenting with overbuilding their own cable network with a fiber network. And so they're just exploring that. They're just testing it in one market right now. But the fact that a smaller cable operator is considering that possibility of just overbuilding their own cable network with fiber, I think is really it's a signal of things to come. I think you're right. It's eventually all roads lead to fiber, as far as I can tell.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'll let this transition to my second topic. Not that this is a smooth transition, but
How about I pitch it over to you? Is that good?
yeah, got it.
There we go.
So yesterday was opening day, and it was the first full day, because opening night was the night before. I don't know why they did it to Netflix. That was a whole disaster. Netflix does not do baseball well, especially not live baseball. It was kind of a nightmare. But opening day, I was there in person in San Diego. The Padres played the Detroit Tigers and lost. However, it was the commercial deployment of automated balls and strikes, which was tested last year at spring training, and then again this year at spring training, but fully rolled out in all stadiums. So this is a service, if you're not familiar with it, it is a combination of Sony's Hawkeye technology with T-Mobile 5G as the compute, or the connection for all of the 12 different cameras. And it basically decides whether or not it's a ball or a strike before the umpire does. But it does not get called upon unless there is a challenge from the player, the pitcher, or the catcher. And one of those three people has 2 seconds to challenge the call by the umpire. And then they tap their head to challenge. And then the umpire says there's a challenge. The call is a strike. And then they go look at they give a like a visual representation that everybody can see in the stadium. And it shows you how many inches it's in or out and whether or not the call stands. And then the game moves on. So it takes I have watched it during spring training. This was my first time seeing it in person. I almost missed it. It happened so fast, which is great because it should be that fast. And it seems to be very reliable. Both teams get 2 challenges per game. They keep their challenge if their challenge is overturned, and they're able to overturn the call. But if they're wrong and the umpire is correct, they lose that challenge. So they only get 2 per game, 2 misses per game, and then they can't challenge any more strikes. So you got to be pretty good at it. Ironically, someone released some data yesterday for all of the previous challenges that occurred under the preseason spring training games, and the New York Yankees are the most prolific challengers and the worst at getting their calls overturned, which is really funny. But other than that, it's really cool because it's a real 5G technology accelerating and improving baseball and making it more fun. And last year, baseball grew hugely. So I think something like this will further improve the game because people do not enjoy when umpires make bad calls. I don't think it improves the game. I think this also might hold them a little bit more accountable because there really was no form of accountability for these umpires in the past. It'll be really interesting to see how it affects their accuracy because I'm a big data nerd and baseball is a data nerd's sport. And there's actually multiple accounts out there that rate every single umpire's accuracy every game the next day and give like full detailed mappings of heat maps of their accuracy and which pitches were most impactful and how they affected the game. So ABS will really help, I think, make the game more fair. I think this also advantages pitchers because there's a lot of pitchers who throw incredible pitches that don't get them called, and they know that they should be getting called. So I think we will see probably a lower scoring season this season because pitchers will get a little bit more of an advantage with ABS.
I mean, it is a pretty smart move by T-Mobile, right, to sponsor this and have it powered by 5G. It really is in terms of sort of smart branding. It's hard to beat that. It sort of displays the brand, it displays the technology. It's America's favorite pastime. It really does make sense. What I wonder though is, so I'm not a fan of ball sports in general. I wish I was. I can't quite bring myself to care about it, unfortunately. But I do wonder about technological upgrades to sports that trace their history back 150 years, and does it lose something if you can measure it down to the millimeter? Are you losing something that is sort of an essential part of the game that is now lost because technology has sort of encroached into the rules of the game. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. It sounds like obviously you're a fan of this new development, but I wonder if there's sort of a little bit of a nostalgia toward calling it like you see it, and you just if the umpire calls it, you just have to deal with it even if he's wrong. No, not so much.
I think there's absolutely a group of people who feel that way. But the truth is that they are a dying breed. And the truth is, like, the way I look at ABS in general is just like, if it's a strike, it's a strike. If it's not, it's not. And sure, you can incorporate the element of human error into it. But the problem is that, like, there are some umpires out there that are atrocious. There are entire accounts that exist to show the worst called plays by umpires, and some of them are off by like 8 inches. The plate's not even that wide. So it's like, I think, the purists will absolutely say you're right. Something is lost from the game as a result of this. But the people who love the game, that want it just to be fair and give everybody a fair chance, I think it's a good thing for the game. I don't think it'll slow the game down. And I think overall, there's just more opportunities for them to pay attention to other things that happen in the game, because there's so many other things that they can call. And the truth is, a lot of these umpires are their eyesight's not the greatest. So I was going to say they're kind of blind, but the truth is, as you get older, your eyes are not as good. And to get to the level of being an MLB umpire takes a long time. So we don't get very many young umpires, which means that their eyes are just not that good. So I think having this system will be something that they can rely upon to correct errors. There have been many funny calls that have happened where umpires like, oh, I guess I was right, and all these kinds of things where it's like very entertaining. I think it's net positive. And to your point, I read some articles about, this partnership actually goes back 3 years for T-Mobile, so they really invested in it back then. I think it's going to pay dividends, because if you think about it, both teams get a minimum of 2 calls over, to challenge, right? So that's a minimum of 4 times a game. You're probably going to see it happen. And that's like, and not just that, but T-Mobile is being associated with something that's like, the truth. So it's like,
right.
T-Mobile is enabling the truth. But no, I think it's great marketing, and I think it's going to pay dividends for them, regardless of what they paid, because it's like basically free marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I like the idea of technological accountability. I think that's a fun one. And so here, try this on this pivot on for size. Talking about technological accountability. My next topic is about the new FCC ban against foreign Wi-Fi routers. So this week, the FCC put out a sort of a surprise announcement. And the announcement essentially says, from now into the future, they are going to work to prevent consumer Wi-Fi routers that are manufactured by foreign companies and manufactured in foreign locations. So that all of them, which is literally every single Wi-Fi router in the world. All of them are either manufactured somewhere else or made by a company that is not based in the US. And so essentially what it means is that if you are making a Wi-Fi router, now you need to apply for a waiver at the FCC. So presumably, so as not to just immediately destroy the entire Wi-Fi router industry with one fell swoop, presumably the FCC will be issuing waivers to this new rule. And, from the perspective of the FCC, their goal is to prevent hacks like the Salt Typhoon hack, which was a well-reported hack that happened, I think it was a year or two ago, in that it allowed a foreign adversary essentially unfettered access into U.S. telecom networks. The extent was never fully reported, but it did seem like one of the worst cyber hacks that the U.S. Telecommunications industry has ever experienced. And I assume this new ruling is stems out of that incident and others like it. But yeah, the reaction to this surprise ruling from the FCC was pretty loud. It was I think the Wi-Fi Now Alliance put out a blog post about all the questions that this raises. the FCC and the White House may have inadvertently opened Pandora's box, was one of their takeaways. And then your friend and mine, Avi Griegard, he wrote a post as well, talking about all the different issues that this raises, and essentially arguing that, to move the manufacture of Wi-Fi routers into the U.S. is going to take several years at least, and even then, the companies that may want to do that have no guarantee that when they accomplish that, if they are able to move manufacturing into the U.S., whether they'll be rewarded politically or not. The political winds may blow a different way, and the rules could change, and then their investments into U.S.-based manufacturing might not actually pan out, which is exactly what happened to Nokia. I mean, Nokia invested heavily into U.S. manufacturing in order to take advantage of the BEAD program. The BEAD program was really designed to reward U.S.-based manufacturing, and then it's been stalled over the past couple of years. And so the investment that Nokia made, I think eventually will pay out, but certainly did not pay out in the way that Nokia had initially hoped. So, yeah, it's just it's another example of some sort of heavy-handed government rulings coming down onto the industry and kind of really surprising everyone. And so I think, one thing we did do here within Ookla, we looked up some of the top brands that we're seeing within the data we can actually see Wi-Fi router vendors, and some of the big ones that we see here in the US are Eero, Wistron, Sagemcom, Technicolor, Netgear, Aris, Nokia, ASCII, and Arcadian, I think is how you say that one. But those are some of the big names that come up when we do our search for CPE vendors. But yeah, I think all of those companies are going to be scrambling in order to figure out what this exactly means for their business.
The Arcadian one is they're the white label OEM for T-Mobile's routers. Okay. So all of the 5G routers that they make, those are all Arcadians. Yeah, I was flabbergasted.
A little surprised about that, huh?
My gasps were flabbered. It's such an epic level of stupidity. But you know what? It also feels like something that, they're becoming the gatekeepers once again. I'm not going to hold back here. This is the most corrupt administration we've ever had in American history.
Here we go. Buckle up.
But I just think that this is an opportunity for them to once again gatekeep and expect donations and money and whatever praise they want to get approvals. Because to your point, absolutely, if I'm a router manufacturer, how much money do I need to invest in manufacturing in the U.S. over the next few years? Because it's not going to happen in 1 year or 2 years, maybe 2 years best case scenario, right? And it's like, okay, then the administration changes, or the parties change, and the rules no longer apply, and all this money is lost, like you said, for Nokia. It's like there's really no winning for these guys here, and the cheapest route is really just payola. So I think the real thing is I'm 100% behind holding router manufacturers accountable for the lack of security on their routers. I do a lot of Wi-Fi router testing and reviews, and the truth is almost every single router manufacturer has terrible security. ASUS got dinged so hard for how insecure their routers were, and the truth is there's no accountability. There should be fines, there should be bans, but just blanket banning everybody that's not manufactured in the US, that just feels like more political payola. And the truth is I'd love to see more accountability on security, and having them submit to audits. I think that would be great, because I just think router manufacturers are not really incentivized or regulatorily required to have secure firmware. And the truth is I review lots of routers, and they have memory leaks. They fundamentally have memory leaks, which is just bad code. So if they can't even do router firmware without memory leaks, what makes you think they're going to do a good job of security unless somebody holds them accountable? So that's been my experience. I'm not going to name names, but half the names you mentioned, I have dealt with their memory leaks on their routers. So I just think some companies are going to try and lean into this and take advantage of it. others are not. I do think the name brands are probably going to be more focused on this because they want to continue to ship in the U.S. Interestingly, I didn't hear you mention Belkin. They own Linksys, so I would have expected them to be somewhere on this list. I was surprised to hear you mention Technicolor because it's kind of a conglomerate now, but I guess they must have some kind of router business now. But yeah, it's frustrating. I think it's stupid. And I think it's kind of par for the course for how the way this administration operates. Not to mention, I won't say any of my opinions about Brendan Carr. That's a whole other story.
I think we could go on and on about different opinions on how this administration and Brendan Carr is moving forward. And I think I very much agree with a lot of this. I think if the problem is security, then deal with the problem of security. I don't think the problem is about U.S.-based manufacturing. I think those are two different problems. You might get close to one with the other, but if the problem is security, then address it from a security standpoint, not from a where does this come from standpoint. That you can still have unsecured devices in the U.S. If the problem is security, deal with security. And I think broadly, it's that all of the companies in our industry, and I think us included, we do not want the government putting their finger on the scale. And that's a little bit what this feels like. I understand government regulations, government mandates, and the role of government, but I think overreaching and sort of favoring some groups over others, I think it becomes a real slippery slope that we don't want the government to put their finger on the scale. We want a fair industry, and it's worryingly. This does seem somewhat unfair and slightly unprepared and a little bit of a surprise, and maybe could have been rolled out a little bit more effectively.
The chaos is the point.
Chaos is a ladder, according to Game of Thrones. So here we go. Anyway, aside from that, I think you've got one more. You've got one more good topic too, I think.
Yes, so this one's a fun one. In my research for topics, I did have a different topic earlier before I realized I want to talk about baseball, which was that Ubiquiti has their own router, ironically enough, that they launched. It's a 5G router that supports all three carriers. So it's a 5G router with all of the Ubiquiti routing capabilities built into it. So it's a pretty cool, compact device. It's $400. It's going to be it's available now, so it's cool. It's cool. I think it's fun. That said, I will also talk about Turkey. So Turkey, I didn't know this, does not have 5G. I thought they did. I would have expected them to have 5G. It is the year of our Lord in 2026, and they don't have it. So they had a spectrum auction back in October of last year. And now we have an actual launch coming April 1st. And I saw this article that kind of tipped me off to this, and I was like, it was actually about Shaq partnering with Erdogan, who's the prime minister of Turkey, or president technically, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and they are launching 5G at the April 1st, and it will be in the entire country. All 81 provinces, which is a big deal. And I was just like really shocked because Turkey is a country of 86 million people that do not have 5G, which is like a mind blow to me because technically we've had in the US since 2020. But I was thinking like, oh, we're talking about 6G, but some countries don't even have 5G yet. So I thought this was worth talking about. Also, I thought it was fascinating that Shaq is part of this 5G launch. Specifically with Turkcell, which is like the biggest carrier in the country. So Shaq is helping launch 5G in Turkey. I don't know.
It's just 2026. What won't happen in 2026? Shaq will launch 5G in Turkey.
And they're saying that the rollout will be enabled by Ericsson and ZTE. So it's a mixed carrier and mixed equipment deployment. But yeah, I'm just like really shocked. I can't believe that one, they don't have 5G, and two, that I didn't know that. But 86 million customers is a lot. That's like a big opportunity. Um, and yeah, I think it will be interesting to see, like, is this gonna be a standalone app deployment since it's 2026? Is it gonna just be standalone right off the bat? Because then they might actually have an advantage on some carriers. So yeah, I don't know. I would love to find out, but we'll probably have to wait till next week to figure out if it's a standalone deployment or not.
Well, we'll have to keep our eyes on Shaq to see what he has to say about things, because Shaq knows all about 5G. But so
Maybe
I saw this item on your list, and so I did a quick search on the Ookla database, and I can tell you that current speeds in Turkey as of February 2026. Now, this is across all providers in Turkey and across all mobile technologies. Current median speed of mobile networks in Turkey is about 54 megabits a second. So,
sounds
not
like
terrible.
4G.
Yeah, exactly. It certainly does sound like 4G. And I thought what was interesting is we can separate out the 5G speeds. We are within the Ookla results. We are starting to see a pretty significant uptick in some early 5G testing there in Turkey, and some of the early speed results we're starting to see, are in the 500 megabytes to 600 megabytes per second range. Though typically after a launch, those speeds go down as you have a lot of users on the network. So I wouldn't expect those speeds to stay there. But certainly it's an indication that Turkey, and actually we do see other countries. I cover Latin America pretty closely. There are some countries in Latin America where operators have decided just not to launch 5G yet. They're holding off until it makes more financial sense to launch. But certainly in smaller countries than 86 million.
I couldn't resist this pun. Sounds like it's going to be a slam dunk.
Oh, there we go. Well done. Yep, I have nothing better to add to that. That's as good as it's going to get right there.
Speaking of slam dunks,
Yes. Speaking of slam dunks, oh, good call. So my final topic that I wanted to talk about today is one near and dear to my heart. It's all about space, and there's a couple of elements here. So I think from an industry standpoint, this week was the satellite show. I think it's in Washington D.C. I have never been able to go. I've always wanted to. Wasn't able to go this time around, but there was lots of news that came out of the satellite show this week. Amazon talked about the fact that they're trying to increase the number of launches for their Amazon Leo low Earth orbit satellite internet service. Lots of other announcements at that show as well. I think, but the big announcement to come out of that show was actually not from a satellite company. It was from NASA. And so NASA this week announced that they are moving up the timeline to build a base on the moon, which is very exciting, I think, for all of us. And actually, there is a telecom component to that, because NASA has been investigating what the telecom network ought to be on the moon. And there's a whole a project within NASA. I think it's called LunaNet, but it's literally a private wireless network on the moon, and how to get all the astronauts connected on the moon and then send transmissions back to Earth and that kind of stuff. But just it's very exciting to see. We've got Starlink's IPO, SpaceX's IPO, maybe coming within the next few weeks. We just found out that SpaceX Starlink is going to be one of the bidders in the FCC's upcoming AWS-3 spectrum auction. They'll probably bid for spectrum for their direct-to-device service, which is powered by all the satellites that SpaceX has been launching. And I think so. Just a lot of stuff going on in the space industry, on the space frontier. But I think so that's interesting, I think, from an industry perspective. But taking one step back as just a person and a citizen of the U.S., and I actually saw you tweeted this out today too, so you're aware of it. But the Artemis 2 launch happens next week on Wednesday, and it is the first human space travel out of Earth's orbit since the 1970s. So the Artemis 2 mission is sending a crew of 4 to the moon. They're going to go around the moon, spend 10 days traveling around the moon, then they'll come back after 10 days. So they won't land on the moon, but they'll go around the moon in advance of potential construction of the beginning of constructing a lunar base in 2028. But when you couple that activity with the big movie this week is Project Hail Mary. It's all about space travel. We have there's a TV show on Amazon or on Apple called For All Mankind, and it's a great TV show. They just released another season. It's all about space travel and landing on the moon. So I think it's interesting from an industry perspective. But even just a step back, it is interesting from just a human being perspective. The idea of humanity returning back to the moon and hopefully, traveling beyond the moon. It is very inspiring. So, certainly Godspeed to the crew of Artemis 2 who are headed out hopefully next week. Safe travels to them, and I'm certainly going to be watching it with great anticipation, that launch and their whole 10-day mission that starts next week. I feel like there's the Olympics. There's a few things that you can just really get excited about just as a person. And so this, in my mind, this is one of them. Artemis 2 mission, dude, I am down. I'm going to watch that. I'm so excited for that. So I'm hopeful for a successful launch and for a good mission for them. And I'm going to be watching it super close.
I will be too. I'm also super excited about it because, I've always been big on space travel. I think it will be something that occurs more frequently in the next few decades. I think we still have some biological issues we need to solve with our human bodies before we really take to the stars. But I wish they were landing on the moon. I think that would be more fun. That we would need to have a lander for that. But I also think that, to your point, stuff like Project Hail Mary, I saw that in 70 millimeter last week. It was awesome.
It was good, huh? You liked it? It was a good movie?
I really enjoyed it. It was a good movie.
Nice.
Just a good, well shot, good music, good balance, good acting. It was just well balanced overall. And yeah, I think this whole industry, we also, have been talking about space data centers for the last few months. I think that's a little bit overhyped, to be honest with you. I think this was something that SpaceX kind of pushed potentially to get their IPO, valuation to the $1.5 trillion territory. I think that whole hodgepodge of companies, whatever you want to call it, Elon's I don't know, Frankenstein, if you want to call it. I think it's a little overvalued. Twitter is part of SpaceX now, essentially. So, God knows what people are actually, bidding on when it comes to the IPO. But truthfully, I think SpaceX and Starlink have a lot going on for them, and I think we're just kind of in this run up. I think, we've talked about this a few times. I think 2027 is going to be kind of the culmination of a lot of these efforts, and 2026 is going to be putting those satellites up in the air to make those things possible in 2027. So I'm excited about it. I was one of the first people to write about T-Mobile's Starlink deployment with SpaceX, and I will continue to try and be at the edge of whatever is possible with satellite communications. I will tell you my own data. Starlink is extremely popular in places where there's just no infrastructure at all. So oil and gas, they use it almost 100% because there's so many places where they're operating out of that Starlink is their only option. So Starlink does really enable a lot of things that we're not really aware of because we're not in those industries. And I think having competition from Amazon with Leo will be great because they need competition. Everybody needs competition. Nobody should be a monopoly. That's not how capitalism works successfully. So I'm looking forward to seeing Amazon be more aggressive and offer more competition, although it's quite clear that they're much more of an enterprise play. But I think that's really where there's a lot of money in this whole satellite push because, consumers are going to want more and pay less. and that's not really great for satellite because that's what's kind of sunk most of the last few constellations that went bankrupt. So yeah, I'm excited. Lots going on, like you said, and yeah, I'm just happy to see more stuff going up in the sky, and I hope one day to be able to actually go to a launch and witness it in person, whether it's over at Cape Canaveral or over here on the West Coast in Lompoc. So yeah, I love watching launches, especially since they launch southward in San Diego and they actually like come through our sky and we get to see the swirls and the trails, and it's gorgeous. So highly recommend it. I'm gonna try and see if I can watch it. Unfortunately, the timing is like literally as I'm driving from San Francisco to Sonoma, so I might not be able to watch, but I might listen and just have it on in the car as I'm driving back.
Yeah, Wednesday morning. I think I'll be in the office. I think I might put it on the big screen TV and have everybody in the office watch too. So I'm excited for it. I think it'll be great, that Artemis launch.
Yeah, well, I think that kind of wraps things up for us. We hope our viewers and listeners found this week's topics interesting. If anyone would like to provide insights on a future topic for a future podcast, please reach out to us on social media. I'm at Anshul Sog, and Mike's at Mike D. Dano. And we hope you don't forget to rate us and subscribe, and we'll see you again next week.